What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Meek, the Uber Geek. Thank you very much for joining me here on Pretty Dece, your daily entertainment and pop culture show. Let's jump into the world of comic books today. I want to talk about a really cool book that's coming out in April. It's the return of a team that's been around since about 2001, and it's one of the weirdest teams that Marvel has ever had. It's the Exiles. And the Exiles are a weird team because essentially they're a collection of heroes that are all kind of alternate reality, parallel Earth heroes. They don't come from the main Marvel storyline, the main Marvel universe. They come from these alternate timelines, alternate realities. They all come from worlds where there's been some sort of a ripple in the time to kind of pull them out of their original time. And they're all together as a team to fix these time hiccups, to fix these issues. So think of the Sliders TV show, but for the Marvel Universe, where they get to jump around and see all kinds of weird, crazy things in different realities and different weird versions of the Marvel Universe, while still being kind of a cohesive Marvel team and still being a Marvel comic. It's a really cool concept for a book, and there have been several iterations of the Exiles. And finally, we're getting a new version coming back. Now, the original version of the Exiles, they from the very beginning have done really cool stuff with their team members. They've introduced characters that we've seen in other mediums or in other storylines that we wouldn't necessarily expect to come back. So, for example, kind of one of the main characters in Exiles when it first came out was Blink. She was a really popular character from the Age of Apocalypse storyline, and then she got plucked out of that timeline to be put into the Exiles. Another cool character was Morph in the original Exiles. Morph, of course, the incarnation essentially that we get in Exiles is the character from the X-Men animated series. So they kind of plucked him out of a completely different medium, a cartoon, and put him into the comics. So it was a really big deal at the time. You get this cool comic character back into, or the cartoon character back into the comics. So with this new version of Exiles, they are doing that exactly again with some really interesting character choices. First of all, we get Blink back as kind of the team leader. She's a fan favorite, and she's there as the front of the Exiles. Very, very cool to have her. We also have some really interesting other characters. So first of all, we have Khan. Khan is an older version of Kamala Khan or Miss Marvel. So kind of an older, aged version of the normally very young Miss Marvel character. Very cool take on that character. Seems like a really interesting direction there. We also have Iron Lad, and Iron Lad, even though he looks like Iron Man, is actually a young version of Kang the Conqueror, the normal villain, actually. Iron Lad is a character that was first introduced in Young Avengers, and is now being moved into this Exiles book here. We also have one of the coolest additions to the team, and that is Wolvie. Yes, Wolverine, short for Wolverine. Wolvie is a chibi kind of like little kid version of Wolverine from the X-Babies show and the X-Babies cartoon. And X-Babies is this kind of cute little de-aged version of the X-Men that, kind of like have playful little fun. It's kind of like Muppet Babies, but for the X-Men. And Wolvie from that series is going to be an actual Marvel universe in the actual Marvel world, running around as part of the Exiles. And he looks awesome. His art mixed in with the more realistic art with the rest of the characters. It's a very, very cool look. I really, really love that they are including him on the team. And the final member of the team is the one maybe to get the most excited about because of the possibilities that it brings, and that is Valkyrie. Now, Valkyrie has been a character in the normal comic Marvel universe for a long time. She's been around a lot. But Valkyrie came into her prominence, came into popularity with the recent Thor Ragnarok movie. And the version of Valkyrie played by Tessa Thompson is a very different version of Valkyrie than we have from the comics. Very different take on the character, despite somewhat similar look, in terms of like costume or whatever. But their origins are very different, their behaviors are very different, and their actual look is very different. The version of Valkyrie that we're getting here is essentially the Marvel Cinematic Valkyrie in everything but exact explicit name. So she will be, and I quote, a tanker-draining, maiden-wooing, giant-slaying thunderbolt of a woman known as the Lone Defender of Asgard. And the art, she looks exactly like Tessa Thompson, like looks exactly like she's like coming right off of the screen from Thor Ragnarok. And it seems that she'll have kind of all the attitude and all the character traits that we loved from the movie. So I'm super excited about that possibility. Like, we get this really awesome adaptation of a character who's so much better than the comic book version. We get her now in the comics. We get to explore this character more in depth in comic book form. I love the idea of this, and I'd love to see it with more characters, more heroes. People love the cinematic universe, and the heroes that we get in the cinematic universe are oftentimes very different than the ones we have in the normal Marvel universe. In the case of people like Iron Man, we've seen their comic book versions kind of morph and adapt to become more like their cinematic versions, because that's kind of an easy thing to do when the gap between those two versions is much smaller. But when you have characters like Valkyrie, where they're kind of essentially completely different takes on these characters, it's awesome to get them actually as they are in comic book form. Now, I really love the idea of it being an alternate reality that brings her into the comic book world too, because that's such a comic book approach to it, right? To actually have, not just say, we're going to tell a story, and it's going to be set in the cinematic universe, and it's just going to be focusing on Valkyrie, but instead, it's still set in the Marvel universe, and an alternate reality version of her appears. That's just pure comic book fun, and I love it. So I'm super excited to check out this Exiles book. Comes out in April. It is going to be written by Saladin Ahmed and drawn by Javier Rodriguez. They seem super excited about the book. Definitely out there kind of tweeting about it. It's super fun. I'm loving the fact that they're getting to put like Wolverine in the book and getting to put Valkyrie in the book. He seems especially excited about getting to write Valkyrie. So, like I said, I'm really excited for this book. Really, really excited to check it out. And I hope that the depiction of Valkyrie turns out to be as cool as I'm expecting it to be. So that's going to do it for Pretty Dece for today. Thank you very much for joining me on the show. Make sure that you like Pretty Dece on Facebook, facebook.com/PrettyDeceShow. Follow me on Twitter @PrettyDeceShow, and visit PrettyDeceShow.com. I'll be back tomorrow, as always, for a daily episode. In the meantime, make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you are listening or watching on, so you never miss any of the content.